Thank you very much. Good afternoon again, everybody. For those of you who've just joined us, you should just have had an announcement that recording is in progress for this session, and it will be put on our archive GeogLive channel after this session. So welcome, everybody. I can see more people joining us as I speak. Hope you all had a good day in school or a good day at the university if you're joining us from a teacher training institution. My name is Julia Tanner and I'm chairing this session. Anthony, if you could put up the agenda, thank you very much indeed. This is one of our regular half-termly free CPD sessions brought by the Geographical Association, the Early Years and Primary Committee for you. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all here today. After I've finished the introductions, we're going to have Tess speaking about the current edition of Primary Geography. Then I'm thrilled that we've got colleague joining us from Winchester University, Emma Till, with two of her students, Lorna and Amelia, who are going to share some fabulous work they did in school, looking at exploring the Arctic with year 1 and 2. And then we've got Anthony, a member of the GeogLive team, with a year 2 teacher local to him in Southwest London, thinking about how fieldwork might connect to the bigger picture of geography in Key Stage 1. So this is the GeogLive team here, Sophie, Sally, Steve, Anthony, the wider EYPPC, and Jen Thomas, who I think has not been able to join us yet. Okay, so welcome everybody. So please do use the chat, first of all, to introduce yourself so we know who's with us today and where you're from. And if you've got any questions or any comments, please do use the chat throughout the session. That's what it's there for. And if there are questions or comments we can respond to during the time, we definitely will. As many of you know, we record these sessions. It will be posted later. And I'd also ask you to respect the fact that the contributions that are being shared today are the property of the individuals who are presenting them to us. So please do respect their intellectual property rights. By all means, use the ideas. That's why we share them with you. But remember that copyright actually resides with individual contributors and the Early Years and Primary Phase Committee of the Geographical Association. Thank you, Anthony. So we have an extensive backlog of GeogLive sessions covering many things. These are some that are particularly relevant today. So GeogLive 6, early on, 2 years ago now, was about cold landscapes. GeogLive 13 was about teaching pace. GeogLive 16 was about teaching weather and climate. And then we focused on rivers on GeogLive 19. But at the end, I'll show you a slide which has got all our archive on it. And you can see we've covered many, many topics over the nearly 3 years that we've been doing it. Another thing that you might be interested in is the GeogPod. Usually these are aimed at secondary colleagues, but this is one that has been put together by Jess Hill. Jess is a primary geography coordinator and assistant head at a school in Leeds, or Woodley Primary School. They're a gold standard quality mark holder, and Jess has been working there for over a decade, developing geography, and in this GeogPod, she shares with you her journey. That's a really, really good listen. I would recommend it to you all. Okay, it's now time for me to hand over to Tess, who is chair of the editorial board for primary geography, to tell you about the current edition. Tess, can I hand over to you, please?
Lovely, thanks very much, Julia. So in our last meeting, this wonderful edition of Primary Geography had just been released, and hopefully now everyone has got it through their letterbox and are becoming very familiar with it. The focus is on fluid geographies, but very different senses of the meaning of fluid, and including perhaps the most obvious ones through the journey of a river, looking at a river from sort of source to mouth. Fluvial fieldwork, all about doing fieldwork around watery areas, walking with and learning from chalk stream magic. And also we got an interview with the youngest ever coral reef ambassador in her very watery world, very different to most of ours. Less obviously, or less watery perhaps, but no less fascinating. We've got a wonderful article from Guy Shrubsholl on British rainforests. Yes, we do have rainforests in Britain, which may be a surprise, but it's a really wonderful and fascinating article about that. Also one on sustainable schools and children taking action around climate change, and a further article on changing landscapes. So this idea of fluid or dynamic landscapes through the medium of poetry and stories. We've also got a really important article on fluid identities, thinking about identities and where children with different identities feel safe and where are sort of positive places for them. And also something on threshold concepts and changing dynamic perspectives. So I think you'll agree we've got a whole host of very different, but all a common thread through all of them, articles with lots of activities, lots of ideas, lots of inspiration and motivation for doing some really exciting curriculum work with geography in schools. So please do have a look at that. We will, of course, have a new one in the spring term, but this is the current one, and I think you'll find something for everyone. As we're on this, please do remember that we're always welcome. We always welcome new writers. We love bringing on new writers, so please do get in touch. The details are on the website. And let us know if you would be interested in that. There's lots of guidance for it. Great way to start, great bit of CPD. Thank you, Anthony. Directly related to today's focus on supporting great Key Stage 1 geography, we've got lots of resources for you, lots of GA publications where you can find specific guidance and ideas in leading primary geography, the Everyday Guide to Primary Geography, in the Know series, Primary CPD Pack series, and also the Super Scheme series. So there's lots on there. So do have a look in the shop at the resources, but also do have a look on the GA website. There are lots and lots of resources there, which are free and available to you. And also as members, you're able to get those. So, and the possibility of free membership as well. So do have a look there. Lots of resources to support and guide you. Thank you, Anthony. Julia, you're, I think, muted.
I've unmuted myself. Thank you, Tess.
Thanks.
So just for those of you who are not aware of this, you may have seen it in primary geography. The Geographical Association annual conference is going to be in Oxford this year, coming spring. First time in a long time we've been to Oxford. It's Oxford Brookes University, the 15th to the 17th of April. That is a change of date from the one that was originally advertised. And it will be a fantastic opportunity to meet other primary geographers, to go to lots of fabulous workshops, teacher-to-teacher events, lectures on all aspects of geography, including lots on primary geography. So a really great opportunity for everybody who's interested in geography to get together and learn some new things. And here we have some books that are particularly useful and helpful for Key Stage 1 geography. And I'm going to pass over to Sophie to talk to these.
So scan the QR code and you can download the Key Stage 1 book list. The book list is split into different areas of the curriculum for Key Stage 1, and we have pulled out, Sally and I worked together to pull out some of the key texts that we've had experience using in our own schools or we've seen other schools using. Most of the books have a little bit of information around them, but due to laptop issues I haven't managed to put information on all of the books, but I have managed to give you all of the pictures and the authors and the titles so you can explore those, and hopefully you'll be able to find some that link in really well to your own curriculum in your own school. The one area which I did not cover was faraway places, just because I felt like that could be so many different regions of the world. It just was endless. So that's the one part I've not covered from the national curriculum statements. Also, I need to point out this is not an exhaustive list of books. So there are other brilliant books out there as well, which you won't find on this book list, because there is a limit, unfortunately, to the number of books we can share. But do scan the QR code and have a flick through, and hopefully you'll find some books that you can use within your curriculum.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Sophie, and very much for putting that together with Sally. We really do appreciate the work that goes into creating this fabulous resource list that you produce for every session. Thank you so much, both of you. Okay, I'm going to hand over now to Emma Till, who I'm thrilled is with us today, together with two of her students, Amelia and Lorna, and they're going to share some work that they undertook last year through their work at the University of Winchester. Emma, I'm handing over to you. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. So welcome to our presentation. I'm Emma Till, and I'm the Geography Subject Lead at the University of Winchester. I teach across both the undergrad and postgraduate programmes and also the school-based routes. Next slide, please, Anthony. I'm delighted to be joined by two of my trainees, Amelia and Lorna, who you'll hear from in a little bit. They're now in the final year of a 3A BA primary education degree. The work we're going to talk to you about is part of the second year specialist module. All of our undergrads take a special subject, which they study in the second, third year, and it usually involves going into school to teach a small group. And in our case as geographers, it involves a lot of going out on fieldwork. These are my current third year specialists, of which Lorna and Amelia are part of the team. This is at Selborne at the Gilburn White Study Centre we went to last year. Next slide, please, Anthony. So the setting for this work was within the University Multi-Academy Trust, which comprises of 5 schools. I've been working with 2 of the schools for several years, supporting the geography lead who's not a geography specialist. And part of that work has involved me taking students in to teach small groups in both the autumn and spring term. The work's done mainly with year 1, but some year 2 pupils. And the work we're talking about today was done in March 2024. Next slide, please, Anthony. So these are the national curriculum requirements that link to the work we're doing. But if you go on to the next slide, please, Anthony, I'll explain how these came about. Okay, so the school is one of many that's decided to buy into a published scheme of work. So I've used that opportunity to explain to my trainees that whilst these schemes do serve a purpose, what you should be doing if you end up in a school which has adopted this approach is making sure that you personalise any scheme to the school. So for the context of this piece of work, I need to explain that we were given these objectives by the class teachers and asked to cover as many as possible of them in 1 2-hour session. We spent quite a long time working through them. We made those national curriculum links from the previous slide, and we came down to the question at the end of the slide to frame the work we were doing. You know, what would we see and experience if we visited the Arctic? Next slide, please, Anthony. So one of the foci that I've been using is to ensure that the geography that we teach is interesting and creative and ultimately hooks the children into learning. With some technical help from home, I created a short film to act as a hook. So it comprised of several still photographs and then some footage that we'd taken from the window of a plane as we were taking off, and then some clips off the internet of a plane landing in a polar region. When these bits were spliced together, we had a 6-minute film, which I sent across to each of the 2 schools as a starting point for the teachers to use for their unit of work. Next slide, please. So what the 2 schools did next was a bit of a surprise to all of us. They each did things slightly differently, but essentially, the selection of photographs shows these sorts of things. All the children were invited to dress ready to go to a polar region. Boarding cards were made. The hall in each school was set up as if the children were going on a plane, and the film was shown. One of the schools went even further, setting up baggage scanning, passport control, providing views outside the window, as well as drinks on the journey, which were served by the teachers. The second school that we visited, because we did it in 2 sister schools, even got hold of a snow machine so that when the children came out of the hall and before they went to work in small groups, they were covered in snow. Next slide, please, Anthony. The next part of the session involved my students working with small groups of children, focusing, or trying to, on the geography that they prepared to teach. So I'm going to hand over to Amelia and then Lorna to tell you what they plan to do to meet those objectives that we've been given in what was about a 45 minute session with about 5 to 6 children each. Next slide, please, Anthony.
So within this lesson, I started by using a KWL grid to gain a quick and concise understanding of not just the prior knowledge, but the knowledge the children wanted to learn, and also for a way for me to explain what the children will be learning in this lesson. Personally, I thought it was really important to show the children that the Arctic was made up of different nations. So to start, we got all the flags of the nations out and matched them together, and we put them all on a map. We moved on to discuss the conditions within the Arctic, and if we were going to write an information leaflet, what would we include? So together we made a big mind map and brainstormed all the ideas we wanted to include. Having some of the prior knowledge of what the children had learned allowed me to tap into that, and we were talking about animals and what we might come across, what would we do if we came across one, and we were talking about polar bears and different things like that. Next slide, please, Anthony.
So following a similar structure to Amelia, I began my input of a KWL sheet identifying what the children know, would like to know and have previously learned, with the intentions to revisit the knowledge identified at the end to consolidate children's learning. Continuing from this, we explored the Arctic region. This was prompted through providing the children with individual cutouts of the Arctic region that came together to form its map. As a team, the children worked together to piece the puzzle, discussing what nation they had alongside where they thought it could go regarding prior locational knowledge and problem-solving skills. Once the map was formed, we discussed what the climate would be like in that area, engaging with children's concept of the Arctic. This was enhanced by comparing its location on the globe to the trends which were formed regarding countries they knew as hot or cold. Developing this understanding was images of people on holidays in those countries to analyse and explore how the climate could impact holiday activities as well as the clothes being packed. Next slide, please, Anthony. The lesson then continued to explore the concept of climate change. This was exemplified through the example of grizzly bears, a hybrid of polar and grizzly bears. Grizzly bears are a recent species that are believed to be the future of the Arctic as a response to climate change, diminishing snow cover, threatening Arctic wildlife and merging territories. This concept intrigued the children, leading them to consider the impact of rising temperatures on the environment and the adaptations required. Questions were then developed to identify our role within this, exploring the topic deeper while giving children opportunities to think geographically, understanding how they can make positive changes for their own futures. Next slide, please, Anthony.
Each student had written their own lesson plan, but after the session, we pulled together some further ideas that we could have done as part of a unit like this. And on this slide, you can see some of the themes that we identified, as well as some questions. Some of them would probably be more suitable for Key Stage 2, but it does show how much potential there was for geography in a unit like this. Next slide, please, Anthony. Probably most importantly for me as a teacher trainer was what the students had learned from the experience. There is no doubt that the children had fun. And on this slide, there are a couple of there's a screenshot from the Instagram page from the school, but it's also given us some further food for thought that we wanted to share. There were some comments about the positive use of digital technology, something that the Ofsted report of 2023 says we need to do more of. There was also some thoughts about what to do differently in terms of children's access to vocabulary before the lessons. Obviously, the trainees were parachuted in to just teach one lesson within the unit, but it was valuable in terms of thinking what they might do this time next year when they'll be planning their own geography units in school. Perhaps the most important finding was actually a cautionary one. Next slide, please, Anthony. We discovered through first-hand experience that there's a very fine balance to be had between being creative and providing a hook like we provided, and being able to teach the children the actual geography and the subject knowledge. So I'm just going to hand over to Amelia and Lorna again, just to say a little something about that.
So from my own experience and the experiences of others within our group, we discovered how important creativity is within geography, but also how there has to be that really careful balance between creativity and the learning. There's no doubt the children had a great experience and had fun, but
there were some points where the geography could have been lost due to the overly creative nature of this lesson.
Next slide, please, Anthony. So just to finish on this slide, we have suggested some resources you could use, which go in addition to the resources that Tess has already talked about. We didn't use the geo resources for this project, but there are some useful ideas in the publications. There's pictures of there. There's also the Met Office resources, which are excellent, and there are some materials provided by the British Antarctic Survey. Next slide, please, Anthony. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We hope you've enjoyed it. There's a few more photographs there with our particular favourite, which is the picture of the Northern Lights that one of the children drew for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Emma, Lorna and Amelia. That's absolutely fantastic to get an insight into this work that I know you had great fun doing in school, and also to hear your thoughts about it afterwards when you reflected on what you've learned. What struck me is how much can be done in such a short session with such young children, year 1 and year 2, in helping them learn about the wider world. So thank you all very, very much indeed for your contribution to our session today. We really do appreciate it. Anthony, can I hand over to you, please?
You can. Thank you, Julia. Welcome to everybody. Nice to have you on board. I'm going to do this session slightly differently to what you might have been expecting. I'm not going to share some slides. What I'm going to be doing is sharing a recording of the session that you would have seen had I had my school colleague with me in the room. I thought it really important that we have the school colleague able to speak to you. And so we recorded our presentation on Monday. So what I'm going to be sharing is the video of it, but I'm going to share the sound. So I'm just going to want you to be really mindful that you turn up your sound as high as you can. Put into the chat if there's any major issues, but we did try this out beforehand, and it did seem to work. So like I say, I'm going to be sharing the video. It will explain exactly what our perspective was on teaching Key Stage 1. And what I love from the previous presentation is we came to a very similar conclusion, and I didn't stress that enough in our recording. So in the Q&A at the end, which we'd love you to take part in and put some questions into the chat for all of us presenting today, we want you to think about that balance between fun and creativity and getting big ideas across to children. That's what we were really trying to do, of say rivers in our case, or the Arctic and distant places, and how we do that in an imaginative way, but also still focus on that core knowledge, the information, the content that we're trying to get across to them. And that balance is something that primary teachers, I think, do really well. And sometimes I might argue, and I am going to have this on record, we can be told by secondary teachers that perhaps we don't get this balance right. But I think there's a lot of arguments, discussion, debate in the schools at the moment about this. So I won't preface too much what I'm going to show you today. I'll just press record, but I'd love your comments in the chat, positive, questioning, or negative even, but we can have a really good conversation about this and the different approaches that you're seeing today, because they are, I think I would argue, Key Stage 1 focused and relating to where the children are in terms of their understanding of the world. Okay, so I'm going to share now and press play and hope that you can see this. So you've been listening to this for about 20 minutes or so. Here we go. So how might we connect fieldwork to the bigger picture for Key Stage 1 learners? I work at the University of Roehampton. I lead the primary undergraduate route, and I'm geography lead. And I'm here with Emma. Hi, Emma.
Hello, I'm Emma. I'm a teacher in Fulham.
Great, thanks, Emma. So Emma and I worked together in March last year with some student teachers, and we tried to do some field work which linked to some work on rivers and the bigger picture of teaching about rivers to year 2s. So I've linked it to the national curriculum in the following way. Clearly we're in London, so it's all about the location of the capital city and our major river there. We thought about similarities and differences, and we thought about our small area in the United Kingdom and the key physical and human features there. But underpinned by all of this was that rivers in particular are earth features that shape our landscape, that connect us to different places through the use of them or through connecting them to other sorts of rivers around the world. And as ever, with a physical feature, they're often changed by human beings over time. And we really wanted to promote that idea of curiosity and fascination in the children, and you perhaps find this from our conversation that we have. The processes that are involved there in terms of that river and the humans that live alongside it. We're trying to deepen that understanding of interaction between the human and the physical processes and how landscapes are formed. So Emma in year 2 and myself and the student teachers worked on 4 lessons over the course of a couple of days, and we started to think about these key ideas: what a river was, where it comes from and where it goes and who uses it. And then we did some local field work by the river in Bishop's Park in Fulham and thought about who actually cares for that park and how has the park and river itself been changed by humans and the problems that that sometimes causes. So Emma challenged me when I came in to think about how we could connect this to the learning that the children already have. And Emma, you were using this book, weren't you? The Secret Sky Garden.
Yeah, this was part of our Power of Reading English curriculum, and it's all about a girl who regenerates an area, sort of a rubbish dump almost, an old disused car park. And so it was all about improving your local area, really, and that became part of our river study.
And it's a great book if you've never come across it, because I had the good fortune to chat to the illustrator Fiona Lumbers just last summer, and she said that she based this particular book, this kind of brutalist concrete landscape, on the Barbican. So if you know the Barbican, it's very much been greened over time. It's very much had, just like this character of Funny, it's had people make it look more attractive to humans by having curved shapes of trees and bushes and plants and colours, and some light and life being brought into it by green and blue spaces. So it's a really good example of a kind of urban space being more humanised on a kind of London context, really. So the children had come across this before, and what we did was we rewrote it, and we said we're going to be explorers, we're going to go out into the landscape and think about their river. And we're going to try and tell a story, the secret story of the river. Because the challenge we had was, this is Putney Bridge, this is Fulham, and this is the view that the children will get from their local park through the railings of the river. And of course we have this challenge sometimes, sorry those images are not showing so well, but we had this challenge of showing this kind of aerial, this oblique view of the river that is very abstract and tries to get the learners to think about it from the source all the way through to the mouth. And that's a really challenging thing, really, for them to think, well, how does my little bit fit into that bigger picture? So yeah, you can see some images there. And essentially we're trying to get this kind of graphical view of the river over to them. So you can see this was a kind of guiding image that we use with the student teachers to try and get them thinking, okay, so if the children are about here, what are the different parts of the river that they could think about? What are the different parts that they need to bear in mind if we're trying to connect it from the Oxfordshire countryside right out to the Essex and the Kent coasts? So Emma, we did these little tasks with them, and you seem to see that these had quite a bit of currency with the children.
Yeah, so we asked the children to think about the users of the river and also the buildings that you might see alongside the river that the users of the river would use. And we also thought about some of the wildlife in the river as well, and where you'd find it along the different parts of the river. So the children really got into that, and we showed them the amazing journey of the eel, I think, that went down the River Thames as well, and the children were very much engaged with that because they have a real fascination around animals and nature, and an understanding that this eel travelled such a long distance just was quite eye-opening for them. But also to think about the different users of the river and how the river is used at different parts of the river was very interesting and helpful for them, and it really made them think and engage more deeply than if they just had plotted some of the places that were found along the river. So they really thought deeply about the uses of the river, how people used them, what you'd find alongside the river when people used the river, and also the wildlife. That became really interesting for them.
Thanks. And that's an easy to find YouTube clip if you want to have a look at it, The Amazing Life Cycle of the European eel. So we had paddle boarders, we had ferries, we had the people who take the waste from lots of people's rubbish on barges down the Thames to be incinerated or recycled. We had all sorts of different contexts for them to really see this useful way that we can actually take people off the road. We can actually alleviate some of the pollution that we have in our cities if we use this river on a daily basis. So you displayed these on the wall, didn't you? Displayed these on the window.
And just on the back of this, we visited the waste depot, the recycling centre in
Wandsworth. Yeah.
Wandsworth, on the back of this, because then the children saw the barges that took the river, the rubbish down the river, to be, I don't know, taken away somewhere, and that was really quite interesting for them, and they couldn't get over the size of these barges and the amount of rubbish that our area of London generates. So that was on the back of this, how people use the river as well. So it really broadened their horizons and opened their eyes a bit from just their little bit of the river.
It's one of my favourite visits. People may have heard me talk about this before, putting on a hard hat and a high-vis jacket and going to the waste recycling centre. So if you've got one local to you, highly recommend that you try and get in there if they have a visitor centre, because it really is insightful to see big bundles of plastic and aluminium and steel and the big piles of glass, shattered glass, that then are put into these barges and floated down the river to be reprocessed elsewhere. So we did some field work. We thought about the area in 5-6 different locations and thought about what this location was like. Clearly it's by the river, so it's been built on in many cases, and we thought about the people that might use it and the sorts of contexts that they might use it for. And we use these indicators as well to kind of underpin our thinking. Clearly these were with Year 2, so we didn't use all these indicators, but if you've never heard of the Healthy Streets indicators before, they're quite a nice set of tools that you can use produced by Transport for London to try and think about streetscapes and how to make a place livable and human. Is there shade? Is there shelter? Are there places to stop and rest? Does it actually make you feel relaxed in the way that it's been designed? So the idea with children that places, even by a river, need to be designed, need to be curated and created. So Emma, we came to the end of our time with the children after we'd done the story, we'd done various other things with the children, and we'll come to some of the other content that we did, like singing songs, but they created this long map of the river, and they seemed to really engage with the different locations far beyond their particular little patch, didn't they?
Very much so. I think they greatly enjoyed seeing the different parts of the river and how humans had affected the river and changed their environment. And I think one of the things I would say about the funny book, the Secret Sky Garden book, is that it's all about how your environment affects you. And that was part of geography that I hadn't really considered before this. And I think going and doing the field work and looking at our environment and how it made us feel was quite powerful for the children. You know, so now they're very much aware of trying to tidy up and not drop litter in the local area, and they're very much aware of pollution and their part in trying to make a difference, but also thinking about how their environment really affects their emotions as well. And I think that's part of geography we don't often consider. But these pictures here are of some maps and sort of sculptures that they made of parts of the river, and they really thought about how the river was used and what you'd see in different parts of the river, and why you might see them. And actually, we then used this in one of our art shows, because we have a tri-yearly art show. Every 3 years we do an art show here. So on the back of the lovely geography work we did, we then went back to the river and did some more sketches, and we did a geographical sketch. So we sketched the geographical features that we'd see along the river, and then we brought that back to school and did some collages, and then we combined it with this river work that we did with the different features and the buildings that you would find along the River Thames. And we combined it with geographical vocabulary and those river strings as well, so that the children could really return and pop back to what they'd already learned, and it really reinforced their learning about rivers. So it was it was really beneficial for them to just revise and return to prior learning and really consolidate and deepen it. So I feel that this project was really helpful in many ways. It wasn't just the 4 days that we spent with Anthony and the students, it was all the other work that we could do to consolidate and deepen and enrich the curriculum, and just sort of doing something very simple like getting out and doing some field work and realizing how actual easy the field work was to do, then inspired and sparked lots of other links and understanding of how geography is really important to our well-being, and also a really important part of our lives that we're not always aware of, I think.
I think you're really helpful there in indicating the fact that, yes, this was just 4 lessons. This was one part of 1 week that you had, but we had some prior learning that we built on, and you then as a teacher took that on and then connected it to other things. So we can sometimes see geography in a kind of 6-week block mentality. This block doesn't tie in with that block, and if we're going to have this curriculum that's a spiral curriculum that connects, that builds on knowledge, we need to think, whatever unit of work that we're doing, how does this have shared vocabulary, shared conceptual understanding that really does add to this bigger picture, this kind of overall view of the world that these children have. Because some of them live very small lives, some of them don't go very far, some of them maybe don't have the opportunity to go on holidays. So geography is a real passport to the world, a passport to seeing rivers, cities, landmarks, other locations near, regionally, nationally and globally, and it's a real opportunity to do that sometimes if we build that kind of connected curriculum. And the other thing that I really liked in your initial remarks just there was that kind of affective domain tying into not just the head and perhaps the hands, the field work, but also the heart. They are allowed to feel things. They're allowed to say how they feel about landscapes and locations, because that's at the heart of place knowledge. I will feel different in places to you, and I need to listen to you as a 5, 6, 7-year-old because you're somebody who lives in this world just alongside me. You live in a community which is perhaps different to mine, and so geography is very much about the human lived experience as well. So just a few more perspectives on how we actually taught this. As Emma and I've said, it was 4 lessons, and we used something called statement maps, and you can see some images here of where the Thames starts its life. And we did this as a call and response. So we said things like, I am the Thames and I start my life here. Can you see me yet? No, not really. Say it out loud. I'm the Thames and I'm lots of muddy trickles and puddles and pools. Can you see me yet? Still not really. I'm the Thames. Can you see me yet? Is there a river there? Or is that a different river? Is it an estuary? Maybe that's the Severn estuary. Maybe the Thames is further off to the east, but we still can't quite see it. London's this way. I'm the Thames, can you see me yet? There's this kind of circular road here, and it seems to be lots of roads converging. Maybe this is London. Can you see the river, though? Still not, but I can see some blue. I wonder what that is. But I do see some water. I'm the Thames, now I see you. I wonder where we live. Interesting. Twists and curls and loops and twists around these meanders of the river. And then it goes through the city. It gets wider and wider. It flows east. It gets muddy and flat and quicker and quicker. And there we have the UK perspective. And that was the centre of London there. And this river is flowing east, as well as the seas flowing in. We have this tidal river, this amazing Thames River. So we showed them various maps. I'm rushing through them now, but we showed them various maps to give them that perspective of where they are in Fulham and where the wider world was. So it's constantly going from kind of local scale to kind of wider scale to try and give them, in a kind of staged sense, that view of this river going somewhere, coming from somewhere, this river travelling, going past us as we stand in our park. And that's another kind of zoomed in view of where they were actually viewing at Bishop's park. So we gave them a worksheet that was cut out, and they had to try and order that, and that certainly has its challenges. That was not a perfect task by any stretch of the imagination. The kind of zoom in, zoom out capacity of kind of Google Maps and Google Earth is really problematic at times to actually get that perspective to them, and sometimes linking to abstract graphics like this to then photographs. I think there's still some work to do with that, but certainly listening to them, talking to them, getting them thinking about which comes first, that kind of chronology of a river was really quite interesting for me to listen to. And we did a song, and I've said to Emma I won't necessarily sing, but if you know the song London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down, London Bridge is falling down, you might well be able to find an instrumental version on YouTube. And you might be able to build up, as Emma said, some of that key vocabulary with the pupils. You may want to write a version of this yourself if you were doing your local river. Bishop's Park is by the side, by the side. So we had actions to this. It was very much stand up. Let's really engage with this language, and let's live how this river lives, high up in the hills as well as out towards the source. So you can see a bit of theory here. One of the things we're trying to build up in the pupils, even though they're year twos, is that there's a lot here about linking it to stories, literacy, the L of the first ace in the pack. Then we've got the oracy. We're trying to talk this landscape, this river, to life. We've got some numbers that we could include. We could tell them how long the river was. We could give a sense of how big the park is compared to school, but perhaps numeracy wasn't as important in this perspective. But the G ace, the final ace in the pack that we've got, is the importance of graphicacy, that importance of maps and images and videos, and really getting them to look at a landscape and try and decode it. So literacy, oracy, numeracy and graphicacy, the four aces in the pack of geography. We mustn't forget that graphicacy, and kind of flood their eyes with lots of different ways that we could kind of link that set of maps, that set of images of the world, to high quality descriptions. So the kind of final thing that we're going to finish with, before I give Emma a kind of summing up viewpoint, we're trying to give them that sense of a configurational knowledge, this jigsaw of an ever widening spatial framework of the world. And it's really important from the Ofsted blog, from the Ofsted Research Review, that we need to build this up wherever we can in the geography that we teach. So Emma, it was a real pleasure to work with your pupils. They obviously want us to come back. I'm not sure if we can this year, but I think sometimes that kind of final end point of having the model, having the way of processing that information they've been given from the fieldwork, from all the talking, and sitting around that and talking it to life, really gave them that kind of big picture geography that I said at the beginning we were trying to get across.
Yes, I think it definitely did. I think having the time and space to talk about the geography was really helpful for them, and we forget that often in Key Stage 1. We try to move a bit more quickly into the written work or the outcome, but actually it's so important to have talk for learning and to develop your ideas. I think for them to have the graphicacy and the different images of the Thames, and to not just have a stereotypical image, was really important. I think for them to see how the river is used was vital, and to reflect on that. But I also think it was really, really special for them to get out into their local environment and see how the Thames has affected where they live. And I think they were very proud of it. They felt it's definitely their river and something that affects their lives, and somewhere that they go to and they enjoy it, and they want to look after it. So I think it really was a very good experience for those children. And also as a teacher, it was really helpful to see that fieldwork actually wasn't as difficult as I thought it might be. And it's all about getting the children to engage with their environment and see how their environment is used and how they use it and how it can be improved. And yeah, so I think it was a really very useful project for everybody in the school, and I've been able to encourage other people to go out and do a bit of field work, and it just needs to be down, you know, it can be as simple as doing a survey outside, or looking at the amount of rubbish that there might be in the area, or the you know, it's or the number of dog walkers there might be in the area and why they might be there. So it's just thinking creatively, but also for a purpose, I think, and trying to make the learning purposeful and meaningful, and building on that learning for the future.
Thanks, Emma.
So hopefully you managed to hear that. Hopefully that was helpful as a series of insights. Creativity for a purpose. I mean, I was there in the meeting and I've forgotten she'd said that, and that ties in so well, I think, with what Emma and the other student teachers from Winchester were thinking about earlier on. So Julia, over to you.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you very much indeed to you and to Emma. I know Emma's not able to be with us today, but please do pass on our great thanks to her. So I can see there's lots of very positive comments about what people have seen and heard in the chat. I probably haven't managed to look at them all. Please do put your cameras on now if you would like to. I personally loved listening to both of those. It's so lovely to hear really great age-appropriate geography for children in Key Stage 1. I love the emphasis on extending children's world. Both of them were excellent at showing that, first of all, through a sort of a simulated trip to the Arctic, using a simulated aeroplane trip, and then lots of visual images. So really some excellent digital fieldwork there. And then, of course, we had Emma in London talking about using their immediate locality to locate the river in a much wider context, where it starts, how it flows through their local area, and then out into the North Sea. So again, a very strong emphasis on fieldwork in both of those, one digital, one real. And it was lovely to hear Emma talking about how easy it was to do the fieldwork in the end, and how she's been able to encourage her colleagues to have a go. Some fieldwork is very simple to organise and do, and it really does engage and motivate children. So very important. I think there's been lots and lots of very replicable ideas in there. There could be plane trips to places, but there can also be bus trips to places, or car trips, or train places to different places, which any of you might pick up in your local area. And every local area, of course, has lots and lots of possibilities. I always think finding your nearest local stream and working out how it gets into the sea or the ocean is a lovely activity for children to start to put their own local place in the context of the UK. So I'm just wondering, somebody in the GeogLive team, is there anything in the chat that we could pick up on now? We've got lots and lots of people here who could answer questions or comment on what we've seen today. Are there any questions? I'm sorry, I haven't been monitoring it. I've been listening.
Just to share while people are thinking, if I may, Julia, certainly Emma and the school were very keen that we just show the kind of impact of this work that the children did as part of their art show. So you can see they were very proud to show off in a kind of elevated level for the parents that geography can be part of something you can show off about. The processing of this information in geography is really something that can be shouted about, can be talked about, can be a focal point for discussion and debate. Where are we heading to? So yeah, the school are really keen to kind of show that off, and it's really nice that it sits alongside this kind of collaborative group project alongside all the other kind of individualistic artworks that were being shown in this particular context.
Yeah, it's really lovely to see the cross-curricular elements in what Emma did, but also to hear her talking about how it helped children develop an attachment, a sense of their local river and the importance of that. And obviously attachment to place is a really important part of valuing place and becoming an active citizen who will care for places. So I think that's another lovely aspect of the work that she shared with us today. I can see some people are having to dash off. Are there any other comments anybody would like to make from the GeogLive team? Do put your cameras on now.
And I think if anybody's got any ideas for how to teach, because we've both kind of shown very specific local context, like a local area or maybe the Arctic. How do we teach the continents in a way that is inspiring, provokes curiosity? How do we do that? Are there creative means to do that? Certainly I can think of one or two, but I wonder if anybody's got any ideas for those other aspects of Key Stage 1 geography that we do need to perhaps focus on, or maybe I suppose the Arctic is the non-European case study that the children might do in year 1 or year 2. Certainly one thing that I've done is taken children into the hall and use the hall as the canvas. The hall is the world, and then we use skipping ropes, we use various other materials that we've got that are in the cupboard, some of those big squashy play materials, and we say, right, where are we going to put the Arctic, the Antarctic, where are we going to put Africa as a nation? So we really give them the sense of geography is not just an A4 piece of paper, and certainly not just colouring in. Nothing wrong with colouring in. I'm going to defend colouring in, shading and things like that, and sketching, as Emma said, but sometimes it's got to be bigger, it's got to be visible, it's got to be something we can move through and navigate through and have a context with.
One of the things I really enjoyed in the first presentation was that different view of the Arctic, not the side view, but looking at it as if from above and seeing the extent of it. And I think it was Lorna who talked about the importance of children understanding that the Arctic included several different countries. I thought that was a really important thing that children probably would not have thought about at all, because that brings together the physical geography of the place and where it is at the North Pole with the human geography that actually human beings have decided to carve up the world into different political entities. And sometimes, of course, there can be conflict, as sadly all children will be very aware of today. So again, I thought that was a really lovely aspect of the work that Emma and Amelia and Lorna presented to us.
And I hadn't heard of Pizzly Bears. Had you, Julia?
I had not. That's a completely new idea to me. When I saw it in the slides beforehand, I thought I ought to look that up, but I didn't get as far as looking it up. But what a powerful metaphor for changing climate is what I thought. What a powerful metaphor, that the place is changing so much, the animals are having to evolve to respond to those changes in the physical environment and the climate. And I think using the examples of animals is often makes things much more accessible to younger children. So very powerful idea, that, and definitely one that I'm going to go away and look at some more.
Yeah, I was going to use that example because certainly if I've taught the continents or advised people on teaching the continents, it is to say, yeah, look at the humans, look at the landmarks, but what are the signature creatures of that continent? Hard to sometimes sum them up, really. What are the ones that are endangered? What are the ones that are really thriving and surviving? Something like foxes and things like that. Foxes are such an amazing species, the way they spread across the world, the red fox in particular. You can find them from North Pole to South Pole almost. They're really amazing. Chris has just put into the chat, the book Poles Apart is a great way of introducing some of the other continents. And in this book, one of the characters holds his atlas upside down to see this different view of the world from the Arctic. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, looking at the world from a different point of view is a fantastic activity. I've developed some free activities which are on the GA website, actually, which is about looking at a south-orientated world map and just seeing how different the world looks if we look at it that way round. It's an Australian map that I use for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's a really interesting activity just to see the world from different perspectives. Okay, thank you, Chris, for that. And it's lovely to have you here today. Right, so it looks to me as if there are no further questions or comments from anybody. Okay, so in that case, I'll just remind you all that there is an extensive archive of GeogLive sessions. They're all about 60 minutes. Some are slightly shorter, some are slightly longer. They cover lots of different topics, and we've got some which are firmly aimed at supporting subject leaders in their subject leadership role. And then we've got some which deal with different aspects of geographical skills like map work or fieldwork. In fact, fieldwork is by far our most popular editions of GeogLive. And then we've got some which deal with individual topics or aspects of geography. So we hope that there's something there for all geography subject leaders in school and all primary geography teachers, which is nearly all of us. So those can easily be accessed on YouTube. Just type in YouTube GeogLive and they will pop up. Thank you, Anthony. If you just move on to that, Just to remind you all that the Geographical Association membership, if it does offer lots of benefits, this is a free activity, a free CPD session brought to you by the Earlies and Primary Phase Committee. But there are lots of benefits of being an actual member of the GA, either as an individual or as your school. I'd just like to give my thanks to everybody who's contributed today, particularly to our contributors from Winchester, Emma, Amelia and Lorna. Thank you very much indeed for sharing that fabulous simulated visit to the Arctic with us. Anthony and Emma, if you could pass on our thanks to Emma for her contribution, also very valued. Tess, who I know has now had to go, but Tess spoke about the resources the GA has and primary geography. And of course, as always, I'd like to thank the rest of the GeogLive team, Steve, Jen, Kate, Sophie and Sally. Sophie and Sally are putting together these wonderful book lists that so many of you I know are finding so useful. And of course, Anthony, who behind the scenes does all the tech. Thank you, Anthony. Without you, we really could not do it. That's true for everybody, but it's particularly true on the tech side. Just at 2 minutes to 6, I'd like to thank you all very much indeed for coming today. I hope you find it useful. Do tell other people who might find today's topic useful. Lots of Key Stage 1 teachers out there who I know would like support with teaching geography in an age appropriate way, and we've just seen 2 excellent examples this evening. So one last thing, it is the GA conference in the spring, but before that, our next GeogLive session is on the 15th of January, and that is looking at mapping. And we've got 2 fabulous contributors, possibly more, but we've definitely got 2. Stephen Scoffham, who has designed many atlases and is speaking about using atlases, and Paula Owens, who has done a lot of work with Digimap with the OS, and she will be talking about mapping, including digital mapping. So that is something to look forward to, the 15th of January, our usual time slot of 5 to 6 p.m. on the 15th of January. Okay, thank you all very much indeed for coming. Thank you particularly again to our contributors, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of evening, and dare I say it, I hope you have a great Christmas. Thank you all very much indeed.